Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the beer-evangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. It's season 2, episode 14 in 2022. My name's Fred, here with my good friend Scott. And we've got a special guest from the here and now, Linus De Paoli, with Gatos Brewery in Grand Rapids. And before then, as usual, let's check in. We're just past the Detroit Beer Festival. Scott, how are you doing, and what's going on in your now festival world?
So yeah, we're 2 festivals in here at the end as we wrap up or look at wrapping up 2021. So both the UP Fall Beer Festival in Marquette in September, and the Detroit Fall Beer Festival at the Eastern Market in Detroit, which was towards the end of October, which we just had, were both really great events. People were so happy to see each other. You know, a good feeling pervaded the whole atmosphere at both events, and they went really well. Conducive weather, good beer, good friends. It was just so many people said it was so great to be out seeing each other again. So it was really, really refreshing and fun to return to those in-person events, even if it is a little fatiguing.
Yeah, but I think between the energy of getting back together with friends and doing the beer festival thing, and then people being thrilled that they're doing those things, that is a second wave of energy where you could kind of feel the I don't know, happiness and joy and gratefulness, and it just it had a really feel good, they both had a really feel good thing going on that harkens back to the early days of festivals, where it's just really shared elation. It was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, agreed. So that was fun. Of course, we're working on our annual conference that we have in January. That's now kind of redubbed Michigan's Great Beer State Conference, and it's our usual collaboration with Master Brewers Association, District Michigan, and an added or expanded collaboration with MSU Extension and what has been their Great Lakes Hop and Barley Conference. So that's coming up in January. We're hoping to be able to do an in-person event with that, although my guess is attendance will be lighter. That's what we're seeing at other events like that are indoor, that's indoors as opposed to our outdoor festivals. So hopefully we don't run into complications with that. And then, planning a full calendar, hopefully, of 5 beer festivals in 2021. 2022, sorry.
Back at it. Well, we're hoping for the best. I think I called this episode was in 2022. We're still in 2021. So forgive both of us our post-festival date, whatever, euphoria. But it is currently 2021, and we're planning the conference for 2022, and we're looking forward to seeing you all very soon. So with that, maybe we jump right in and get to our Brewers Dozen for episode 14.
Yeah, this week's Brewers Dozen is a kind of a stretched out, bigger Brewers Dozen, but it also represents the end of our second trip through the list of brewery members, and it's kind of 2 groups in the Detroit area. But if we look at the Northeast area, outside of Detroit and then just Southwest, we've got a collection of breweries. And we can start in the Northeast of Detroit, I'm calling it, with in Clinton Township, where we have Great Baraboo Brewing Company.
Yeah, and then we have a second location for Cuisine Brewing in Clinton Township as well.
And speaking of Cuisine, if we move next door to Warren, we have Cuisine Brewing Company, the flagship brewery in Warren.
And then Dragon Mead Microbrewery. Those two are longtime friends and both longtime members and supporters of the guild in our brewing community for sure.
Yeah, and then if we move a little ways from there to St. Clair Shores, an offshoot of Dragon Mead is Dragon's Landing.
And then also in St. Clair Shores is Jamex Brewing Company.
And Copper Hop Brewing Company is in St. Clair Shores.
And who knew St. Clair Shores had 4 breweries other than you, but we wrap it up with Baffin Brewing Company.
Yes, and then if we head to St. Clair, for those of you not familiar with the area, it is not the same as St. Clair Shores, but it's nearby, Warwater Brewery in St. Clair.
And we head a little southwest and go over to Saline. We've got Salt Springs Brewery.
And the second brewery in Saline is Stony Lake Brewing Company.
And then we have Tecumseh Brewing Company in Tecumseh.
And Blackfire Winery and Brewery is also in Tecumseh.
And then Original Gravity Brewing Company in Milan.
Milan, Fred, it's
Milan.
Milan.
I was pausing because I was like, there's 2 ways. I'm pretty sure it's not like Italy, but that's the one I'm choosing.
Yeah, that
Milan.
of course is our friend Brad Sancho. That's been part of the guild for quite some time. And we'll wrap things up by going all the way kind of down in the southeast corner of Michigan to Temperance. They have a distillery and a brewery in Temperance. Kind of interesting, but Pavlov's Brewing Company in Temperance, Michigan wraps things up.
Nice. Well, we've made it through. We'll start the loop again. There's a lot of breweries to get to know, a lot of breweries to visit, and a lot of breweries that make up this great beer state. So that's our Brewers Dozen shout out, which brings us to Linus De Paoli, our featured guest for the day. And I really enjoyed this conversation with Linus. It's an unusual story, and then at the same time has a lot of common threads with so many breweries, but this one has international intrigue and a pandemic and all sorts of different relationships. What'd you think?
Yeah, the whole international kind of roundabout thing that makes up Trace Gatos and Linus is pretty interesting. It is a little different, even though, like you said, there are a lot of common threads. One of the comments that I really enjoyed that came out of the interview was when he was talking about it being a welcoming community in Michigan, and the diversity of beer styles we have here as part of what makes Michigan unique. I enjoyed hearing that, and I really enjoyed the overall interview. Linus is relatively new to the community here in Michigan. He's relatively new to having his business. It's not very old, and the interview really made me want to go over there and talk to him some more and drink some of his beers, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. But it really, I was at the brewery in its previous incarnation, but I haven't been to Trace Gatos at that location, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think very personable, and it was great just to hear the vibrance of he and his wife's ideas and what they're creating. And like you said, I think as a member of the Michigan Brewers community, and as somebody who's myself been kind of we have a little tunnel vision, I think, or at least you just wonder it, like, well, I know what I love about our community and what I believe to be true. And when you go through these projects of trying to express it, you also, I look for these opportunities to sort of hear someone else's point of view besides mine. And this conversation was a great example of that, and pleasant to hear because it was so favorable. But hearing somebody visit, come to Michigan to see what our scene is about, to decide whether they're going to invest in this project they've been working on, it was really touching to hear that and to hear what the hallmarks were from his point of view. So hopefully everybody will enjoy hearing that story and hearing what the Michigan scene looks like to somebody from across the pond, and then getting to see their contributions to the community as they come here. So really looking forward to checking it out myself, and hope everybody enjoys the conversation. Here's Linus De Paoli from Gatos Brewery.
Cheers.
All right. Happy to welcome Linus De Paoli to Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. Would love to hear a little bit about your story. I'm already intrigued. It's a story of international intrigue and global pandemics and a brewery opening all in one.
Yes. Yeah, it's a funny story. I mean, we're from Tres Gatos. I mean, and you can say it either way, either Tres Gatos or Tres Gatos.
Oh, thank you.
Brewery. We're located here in Wyoming, Michigan, but me and my wife, we are actually from Brazil, born and raised in Brazil. Lived there until 2015, when we were both transferred to Germany on our previous lives and jobs. Lived in Cologne, Germany for about 6 months, and then moved here to West Michigan last December to take over the operations of Cuisine Brewery and turn it into what it is today, Tres Gatos. So it's a big, almost round the world tour to get from Brazil to here. And to be honest, we never thought we would end up here when me and my wife, Renata, we started thinking about opening and owning a brewery. We had a lot of options on the plate where to do that, but West Michigan was never one of those, surprisingly. But then end of 2019, I got a call from Romy Bailey, who was the owner of Cuisine Brewery, who I met back in 2018 in Germany, telling me he wanted to sell the place and retire, and he knew we wanted to do something like this, and asking if we were interested in coming here, checking out the place, checking out the beer scene in West Michigan, and seeing if we were interested in taking over the operation. So actually, I came here to visit the brewery, Cuisine, and the Grand Rapids area on February 2020, so right before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Spent about a week and a half here checking the place, checking the beer scene. Went back to Germany, lockdown hit, so we had a lot of time in our hands to think about and to run some numbers and run a business case and think if it was a good option to do it here instead of the places where we were thinking about. So end of March 2020, me and Renata, we said, looks like a good option. Looks like a good idea to take over a business that is already running. So the time until we get from putting money down and we start getting some revenue is much shorter than building up from zero. So we said, let's give this a try. Let's see if it works. But because of the pandemic and everything that was going on, all the U.S. federal government offices being shut down, it took us a long time to get our visas applied and approved. So we started working on the visa processes back in April 2020 and got our visas approved in November 2020. So it was a quick 7-month process. Then packed our things, grabbed our cats, jumped on a plane. December 6th, we were landing here in Chicago and coming to West Michigan. And then again, pandemic, everything very slow to get personal documents and to work on the purchase agreement and settle all the details on the purchase and work on our licenses and everything. And it took a little bit longer than usual. But We finalized the purchase end of May, got our licenses end of June, and opened for service beginning of July, when no restrictions were in place anymore. So it looks like all the delays worked in our favor. So when we were finally open for business, we didn't have to worry about masks and restrictions in capacity and difficult safety protocols and stuff, since everything was over.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
pretty wild to imagine. You know, we're in a highly regulated business to begin with, so getting licensing, and you've got all these shutdowns happening, and ever changing restrictions with COVID, and then to add to that, you know, visas and be doing all this international work is just an amazing feat, I think, to have done that through 2020 is a real sort of commitment and vision. So it's got to be exciting to be opening and having or open and having people in the building drinking beer.
Oh yes, I mean, it was when we were finally open beginning of July. It was such a big moment of joy for us. All this work that we put, specifically the last year and a half, on coming here and running the place was finally happening. We could finally start selling beer to customers and interact with them, and that was such a great moment for us. And the whole first and second months of operation, it was nothing but joy and good things, and finally being able to share a good beer with customers, that was awesome. That was really good.
Yeah.
But you know, the way we see things is, you know, there's never a perfect moment for anything. So we just took the uniqueness of the situation with COVID and everything for us as just, you know, boundary conditions. We just have to learn to deal with it. There's nothing we can do to change. So let's just work as with those conditions as a given and do the best we can to get things done fast. So and that's how we approached everything last year with visa, and everything was just, okay, it's going to take time. It's going to take the time it takes. Let's just work, and once it's done, it's done, and then we go for the next step. So try not to overstress about this, the things we can't control.
Yeah, well, it's a healthy and productive attitude. So I'm curious, as you know, when we talk to people on here, we often talk about kind of their first spark of what got them into beer. And I have many questions with your story, but I'd love to start there and not skip over that, in terms of, you know, your story already, and just what we've heard here has engaged a lot of sort of forward-thinking vision and investment. But before there, at some point, you're just sparked into beer. What was that like for you and for your wife, and how did you where did the seed begin?
Yeah, so I guess it's a very similar story to a lot of brewery owners here in the US. So I first started drinking beer. I was probably, I don't know, 13, 14-year-old, which is definitely not legal here and not legal in Brazil. But I mean, that's just how things happen when you're a teenager. And when I was 18, I was lucky enough to spend 6 months in Germany with my father. He took a sabbatical from work at the university, took me there with him. So I spent 6 months in Berlin, and that was like the first big moment for me. So Berlin, drinking Hefeweizen on beer gardens, Berliner Weissens, almost everywhere we go to, good German lagers as well. As an 18-year-old, that was quite a privilege. And then for a weekend, we went to Brussels. I went to a beer museum at the Grand Place in Brussels, had some really good Belgian beers. So that opportunity that I had when I was at such a young age to go to Europe and try a lot of the good traditional craft beers from Europe was one of the big moments for me. But then back to Brazil, there weren't many options at the time. And I think I was about, I don't know, 23, 24 years old when the first German Hefeweizens started to be imported in Brazil, mostly Erdinger and Franciscana and Paulana, so most from, you know, AB InBev. But still, it was the first German Hefeweizens available, and I think that was my wife's also first experience with beers outside of the just these standard industrial pale lagers. So that was it, the first moment that we got in touch with different beers. Later on, actually, here's a funny story. 2005, I was working for Ford Motor Company in Brazil, and Ford sent me to East Michigan to do some work together with our North America colleagues for about 4 weeks. No, it was 2 weeks, April 2005. And when I got here in Michigan, my US colleague said, "Hey, have you ever had Oberon?" And I said, "Man, what is that? I've never heard of it." So he bought me a 12-pack of Oberon, and we crushed that that night. So actually, my first experience with US craft beer was Bell's Oberon about 60 years ago.
Wow.
So after that, I got married, and me and my wife, we started to try out more and more different beers, mostly Belgian beers at the time. That was what we could find the most in Brazil. Then they started importing American craft beers. And then by 2011, we started homebrewing. So that's the story where it gets very similar to most of the other brewery owners. We started homebrewing, and it quickly became a passion. Brewed for a long time until the point where I really wasn't happy with my job as an engineer at Ford anymore. I wanted to get out of corporate life. And then in 2019, had a really good opportunity to change careers and start working as a brewer. So I took a buyout package at Ford of Germany at that time, and started working as an intern assistant brewer in a very small brewery in Bonn, Germany. And that was a really cool experience. I learned a lot on day-to-day brewery operations. So I guess our history, our story with craft beer is very similar to most brewery owners, but if you add the whole world traveling thing, that's a kind of
Yeah, it's a little different in a lot of ways, and similar. You know, the thread is similar. Can you remember when you started to think it was a viable? So obviously you had some interest to take this intern position when you had a seam in your career, and say, "Hey, I want to brew at a production brewery," versus at home. But do you remember when you started to sort of try to evaluate or imagine opening up your own brewery?
Well, first time we started imagining that was back in, I think, 2013 in Brazil. But then I ran some numbers. I realized that the investment was too high at that time. So I gave up that idea at that time. And then 2018, actually, before I started working as a brewer, I already started putting numbers together to see if we had a viable option of operating as really small. The idea was like a really small brew pub in Europe, probably with a 1-barrel brew system. So to do like really small and try to make that viable as an operation. So the idea started coming back to me first half of 2018. That's when I started looking for, equipment, location, starting putting together cost spreadsheets and seeing if the business was viable. That was 2018, even before going to work as a brewer. Working as a brewer for me was always a stepping stone to get to being a brewery owner. I always thought that if I want to run a brewery, I have at least to have the experience brewing myself so I know what the day-to-day operation is before I get myself into running a business.
Yeah. And was your brewing position there before, or how did that relate timing wise with your VLB experience and your brewing education?
Yeah, so the courses I did at the VLB, so I did two short courses at the VLB. One was actually a workshop on beer sensory analysis. The other one was a 2-week craft beer and practice course, and those two were in 2018. So it was before I started working as a brewer. So 2018 for me was a year of planning and getting ready to make the transition. I still didn't know when the transition was going to happen. I was just, okay, let's start planning, putting numbers down, getting education, getting myself up to speed. So when it happens, I'm prepared. Then 2019, the offer came to quit my job and make the transition. And then I felt ready for that.
Yeah. So I think that, I also find it interesting that you had done this, you'd been doing homework for a little while and revising it and changing it. So you had an idea of what it would look like for you to create something. And then that became a valuable, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, it became a valuable comparative tool when this other opportunity presented itself. And so I want to get into that to a second, but I think this is a really interesting opportunity, since we talk a lot about our community here on this podcast, but also throughout Michigan. We talk a lot about, about what makes it different to be in Michigan and what makes our community what it is. And so your vantage point of coming in from another part in the world with the intent of, earlier you said, I wanted to check out the scene, I wanted to check out Michigan, I wanted to check out the brewery. I find that to be a remarkable vantage point for us to hear. So I just wonder, what stood out to you as what were the thoughts that you had about Michigan brewing scene as you came and evaluated it, and what eventually became the invitation for you to move here?
Yeah, so when I came here, beginning of 2020, what stuck out for me, and I was kind of expecting that, but really stuck out for me was the diversity of beer styles that we have here in Michigan. You have everything. We have everything. I mean, there's not a single beer style that is not being brewed that I can think of in Michigan. And comparative to Germany, I mean, most of the market's a very traditional market. But even if you look at the young craft brewers that are doing new stuff there's a lot of stuff that is still not brewed in Germany. So that was a big wow moment for me. Like, wow, people here are really doing everything and doing everything really well. So if we do this, I need to make sure I'm at my A game and we are putting really good beers out, because mediocre stuff is just not going to go well in this market. And then when we came back here to finally take over the place end of last year, what's struck out for me as really positive about the brewing community in Michigan, and specifically here in West Michigan, is how friendly, welcoming, and collaborative most people are. We've been really well received and included in the brewing community here. Everybody helps us, everybody gives us good advices, points us in the right direction, helps us find suppliers, solve issues. People don't treat us as competitors, they just treat us as colleagues, as members of the community, and that's so freaking awesome. That feels really good to be part of this community here. So this is definitely a really positive thing.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that as a a longtime member of the community, especially, it just seems like there's opportunities for this to feel different. You have, somebody new coming from across the world, and you could, you could just see an opportunity for that to not be as welcoming, especially in these strange times. And so it's heartwarming to know how our community showed up and how that felt for you, and that it was encouraging. So thanks for sharing that. We always love to see it in action rather than in theory. That's where it counts, is how it feels when somebody new comes into the community. So we're glad to hear it, for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean there hasn't been a moment where we didn't reach out for help and we didn't have at least 3 breweries offering to help us. So that's awesome. I mean, not the brewing community in Germany is not like that, but I would say is less.
Mhm. Well, that's really great to hear. What did you think about, like, from the marketplace? I heard what you said about the diversity of the beers being brewed and on the brewing side. Um, what was your take on consumers or the retail marketplace, or kind of what your hope for was for who could uh, who might walk into your brewery? It has to be interesting to make that evaluation across the world.
So I guess what's really good here is that craft beer is such a mainstream thing, that craft beer is everywhere and reaches everybody.
Mhm.
Whereas in other markets where it's still a niche or a niche and within a niche, uh, here every type of person can walk into the brewery and ask for a beer. You see blue collar workers, white collar workers, you see retirees, you see young couples, uh, people from uh, any color, any creed. So it's not a specific group that is either targeted or consuming craft beer here in the US. I mean, there's obviously some diversity issues that still need to be worked out, but that is not a craft beer market issue, it's just a general society issue.
Yeah.
Whereas in Germany, you go to craft beer bars, the modern craft beer bars, and it's mostly like young hipsters drinking hazy IPAs because that's what's trendy, that's what's hip. So that's one big difference. The other one is on the retail market. I mean, there's craft beer everywhere in here. There's
Yeah.
craft beer in freaking Walgreens. And that's not the case in Germany. Germany, you can buy beer almost everywhere, but there's no craft beer everywhere. When we moved there to Cologne in 2015, I had to spend, I think, a week on the internet to find me a place to buy a good American pale ale in Cologne, the 4th biggest city in Germany.
Yeah.
And then I found a place. I used to call him my dealer. But I mean, it's so amazing. Craft beer is everywhere. And so I just want to make sure we can one day have our beers in some of these places. But it's incredible. Craft beer may be a small part of the market share on the overall beer market, but it's just such a big mainstream thing here in the US. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so I'm interested in hearing about, so I heard the logic and sort of the mindset around the advantages of buying an existing brewery. And so what parts of Kitzingen Brewery did you feel like you wanted to kind of continue or uphold? And what were the hallmarks of Trade Gatos that were coming to light in terms of what was the hallmark for your vision in your brewery that was going to be new and make change?
Yeah. So I guess from Kitzingen, I mean, it was a neighborhood brewery catering to the neighborhood. So 2-3 mile radius around the brewery. They were very strong with the local community. They were about authentic German food and brewing really good German beers. So I guess those are some of the things we are keeping as part of our Tres Gatos brewery identity. Is we are a neighborhood brewery. We are catering more to the neighborhood than trying to be a destination brewery. Of course, we try to bring people from all over the state to come visit us, but our focus is the local community here. And we are about authentic. We are about doing authentic Brazilian food and some German food because that's part of our history as well. And I'll always have at least 3 German beer styles on tap because I like brewing them and I like drinking them.
Nice.
So that's some of the things from Kitzingen that we kept. But to put our identity into it, so Tres Gatos is about me and my wife Renata, is about who we are, where we come from, and where we've been. So we're gonna do a lot of Brazilian food. We're gonna do a lot of international food from the places we liked visiting and the food we liked eating, like Belgian food, Irish food, Portuguese and Spanish food. So that's part of the new things. So Tres Gatos is a brewery that does Brazilian food, but is mostly an international experience. It's about sharing what me and my wife believe and our values. And it's also about a place that is open and welcoming to everybody, regardless of who you are. So it's about being an open, inclusive, and diverse place. So that's what we are trying to be, and that's who we want to be.
That's great. So for listeners not familiar with Brazilian cuisine or culture, and also German cuisine and culture, as it sounds like you're really bringing your own personal combination of those influences into the building. What does that mean for a consumer? What does that look or feel like to come into a place with with Brazilian and German influence?
Yes. So talking about Brazilian cuisine is kind of like talking about American cuisine. It's a big country. There's a lot of different cuisines inside the country. So we're doing mostly the food from the area that me and my wife come from, so which is São Paulo and the southeast of Brazil. And what we're doing is basically comfort food, street food, bar food. So we're doing a lot of appetizers and sandwiches. We do a cheese roll made with tapioca flour, which is from Minas Gerais. Both of our families, mine and my wife's, come from Minas Gerais. So our grandmothers used to make that for us when we were kids. So we're sharing some of that with our customers. We have a chicken dumpling, a deep fried chicken dumpling. We have deep fried dumplings, which are kind of like deep fried empanadas or deep fried wontons, but Brazilian style. So the dough is different, the filling is different. We have fried yucas. So it's all authentic Brazilian street comfort food. And on the sandwiches, we have a roast beef sandwich that is very traditional from São Paulo. It's called Bauru. It was invented on a bar in São Paulo, so it's typical bar food. We have a mortadella sandwich, which is also very traditional from São Paulo. If you watch an episode of Anthony Bourdain's No Reservation in São Paulo, first thing he ate was the mortadella sandwich. So that's what we're trying to bring. It's not fancy food. It's easy, accessible, but authentic Brazilian food. And I'm pretty sure anybody who comes here will find something they like on the menu.
That's great. Where to go next? I think I'd love to hear a little bit more about building your team out and building your brewery out in terms of what does your overall team look like front and back of the house, and what was it like to build out a team in these crazy times?
Yeah, that was an interesting challenge because again we're we are a lot of firsts here. So we are first time business owners, first time brewery owners, first time restaurant owners, first time US, everything.
It's a lot.
So it was a challenge, but it was a nice challenge. We had good people applying for the positions, and I think we were able to put together a good team right now. So we have our full-time cook. We like to joke that she came with the place when we bought the kitchen operation. She came with the furniture, so she's been with us since day one. She's awesome. She's learning Brazilian food and adapting to the new menu and really up to speed on everything. We just hired a second cook to help her. Second one is Brazilian, so she brings a lot of reference from Brazilian food to her. And in the front of the house, we hired a mix of experienced servers who have worked here at Cuisine before and will work at other places, and people who had zero experience in serving, but were passionate about beer. And I think having the right passion and attitude first is more important than experience. And right now, I think we're doing really good on providing good experiences to our customers and good service. We work with a lean team. So if you look at our place and the number of servers we have is usually less than half that you see in most places. But we try to let people know this is more of a relaxed experience. Things may take a little bit more than you are used to in some other places, but we're going to take more care of you and try to make things right. So it's not about speed, it's about creating the right experience. And having a lean team also allows me to pay them a fair wage. So that also helped attract and keep good employees. Because after living in Germany for 6 years and seeing how a lower inequality country is and the benefits of social justice, we just felt it wasn't fair paying minimum wage to our employees. We want to pay them a fair wage, and that's helping us attract the right people and keeping the right people with us.
Terrific. And how about the brewing side? Are you doing all the brewing? Have you got help there? And what are some of the hallmark beers?
Yeah, so on the brewing side, I'm doing all the brewing because that's the main reason I wanted to do this. I love brewing. I love sharing my beers with people. I am looking for some help, maybe an intern to help me out on brew days. It's always good to have somebody watching you over and helping you out. But I'm not planning on hiring a brewer short term because I still want to keep doing that myself. I think our hallmark beers right now are the Kölsch. So I had to brew a Kölsch after living 6 years in Cologne. That's a beer I hold close to my heart, and I want to get it done right. We also have a Hefeweizen, a German wheat beer, which is one of the favorites here on the previous customers of Kitzingen and on our current customers now. So I wanted to make sure we have something for the customers so they keep coming in. Our double IPA that I brewed right when we opened in July, the American Bobtail, that was really well received by everybody. A double IPA at 8%, but really nice, easy to drink, and kind of sneaky. Was a huge success with customers. And I think right now, the other one is the Pantera Pardos, the Imperial Stout that I put out. It's a 10.5% Imperial Stout, but it didn't finish too high gravity, so it's kind of on the drier side, not boozy, which also makes it really easy to drink, and yeah, can
another sneaky one.
But they're really good sellers, and people like that a lot.
Great. Well, I think it's a good time to move into our last call questions, which are questions we've been asking everybody in this last year or so. And it starts with one that you've pretty much addressed, but I just wonder if there's anything else, especially as you've seen this from a few different vantage points. The first one is really just about the pandemic and how has COVID-19 and all the related response to it affected your overall business and industry outlook?
So COVID, I think it added a whole bunch of uncertainties to the business and to the market. But I guess being new players in the market and in the business, we already had a whole bunch of uncertainties to begin with. I think it just adds a whole nother level of, unpredictability, if that's even a word, to running a beer business anywhere. But again, since we opened right when all restrictions were lifted, we didn't have to work with all of them right away, but we're still working with, the shadow of a possible lockdown maybe happening anytime because of Delta. We're always working with a shadow of inflation and rising prices on commodities and food ingredients. But I guess, as I told you before, as with anything, we take this as just a constraint and a situation we can't control, and we try to put some contingencies in place if something happens, but there's not much we can do with a global pandemic going on the micro level. I guess one thing is always be ready to diversify your revenue options if something happens with packaging beer in cans and doing food to go as soon as possible if you can't have any customers in the tap room anymore. But besides that, there isn't much you can do to help reduce or alleviate the effects of a global pandemic on the micro level. So that's how we approach things. And I have a model that I tell people: it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. So we know something may happen. Let's not overthink and overstress about things that are not a problem today.
Yeah, makes sense. So the next one is, the more you know, what beer style do you feel most connected to, and what do you wish more people knew about it?
So as I said before, the beer style I feel most connected to is Kölsch. Just because, again, 6 years in Cologne, drinking Kölsch on a daily basis, it's just so freaking easy to drink, so nice to have around friends and well, almost on any moment. And what I wish most people know about Kölsch is that it's not a lager. Big misconception. Kölsch is an ale, is a top fermented beer. It just needs to be lagered for a good amount of time. Not a lager. And please don't mix anything with Kölsch. Kölsch is just plain, simple beer to be drank with friends, not to be overthought and not to take. It's like a supporting actor on a good night out with friends. So Kölsch is really close to my heart, and I wish more people brew that and more people appreciate for what it is.
I like it. I long referred to it as beer flavored beer.
Yes.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
And it's not simple to make a beautiful beer like that, but it is a showcase in simplicity.
Yeah, and it's a nice challenge for the brewer to make it right. So it's a really cool beer style.
So the next one is about your ideal home bar. So with more and more, it's changed a little bit now this summer, but still with more and more people drinking at home, being prepared, especially going into fall and winter. Suggestions for setting up a good home bar setup, whether that be, you know, glassware, shelving, refrigerator, anything, Kolsch glasses.
Yes.
What do you think people should have in their home bar? What's a good tip?
So yeah, first, ideally, and I would love to have a home with a small kegerator with 2 taps. But I guess with 15 taps on the brewery tap room, I don't need that anymore. Glassware, just a good set of glasses, maybe some shaker pints. I'm not a big fan of shaker pints. If you can get some Vili Besha, that's the one to go. Works for any beer style, from IPAs to lagers. If you can get some tulips for stronger ABV beers, you know, snifter tulips for stronger ABV beers and Belgian beers. A must be for me is at home, I always need a couple of Duvel glasses because me and my wife, we love Duvel. So we need a proper glassware. And that's it. I mean, again, don't overthink, don't overcomplicate. Beer is supposed to be something easy and fun. Just a good fridge, a good set of glasses, and be happy. Make sure you have the beers you like on the fridge. As fall comes, a good Madsen, that one, or a good stronger stout as well as the weather cools down. That would be my recommendation.
I love it. So love and hate, what current trends do you either love or hate, and how are they reflected or not in your brewery?
There's something I used to hate, but now I kind of love, which is hazy New England style IPAs. When they started coming out about, I don't know, 5 years ago, when I had first contact with them, I just felt like that was a sloppy brewing. And then I started brewing them myself 2 years ago. And then I realized it's freaking hard to get it done right. The right amount of haze, the right amount of hop flavor, no hop burn. It's hard. So making a really good hazy New England style IPA can be as difficult as making a nice clean pale lager. So that's one of the trends right now, which is probably not a trend anymore, is hazy IPAs. I used
Nice.
to hate them. Now I love them.
Transformation. That's a great story. How about your first drink? Do you remember your first alcoholic beverage ever?
Oh shit! Yeah, that was a long time ago. It was probably some standard lager with my parents at home when I was a kid. Well, I mean, that was 35 years ago. Parents used to, in Brazil, used to give their kids, you know, just the foam on the beer, so you would sip just the foam. I probably was drunk the first time with just the foam when I was less than 10 years old.
Nice.
So yes, I mean, people were not as conscious about alcohol consumption in the past as we are today.
How about your worst drink?
Oh, wow. Alcoholic beverage
Sure.
or beer?
Whatever.
Well, I guess the
Whatever comes
worst
to
has to
mind.
be Malort. A couple friend of
Yes.
ours brought a bottle of Malort from Chicago a couple
Oh
months
yeah.
ago. I tried that. It's freaking awful, man.
Yeah, Malort has been a frequent visitor to this list.
Yes,
Man,
that's awful. That's just awful.
I would say it's a love it or hate it thing, but I think it's a tolerate or hate it thing. I don't know
Yes.
if there's a love.
Well, maybe among people from Chicago, some people may love it. I don't know.
Yeah. Story time. So you know, this is an interesting one with your with the time that you've spent here, but we like to encourage people to share any go-to funny stories that they find they keep telling about their world in Michigan beer. I think you could expand that to your world in beer in general. Is there anything that you find a go-to hysterical story about your time in beer?
There are many. There are many. Oh man. I guess one is that one that I already told you. My first experience with American craft beer in general being Bell Oberons. That's pretty amazing. That by a complete act of chance, we ended up running a brewery in West Michigan, close to Bells.
Yeah.
So that's a funny one. The other story is how we ended up here. I mean, the funny story is before we decided to move to West Michigan, me and my wife were thinking about opening a brewery in either back in Brazil or in southern Europe. Probably Catalonia in Spain, close to Barcelona, or Portugal, because we wanted to move away from the crappy German weather and go to a place with a warmer, sunnier weather, and preferably close to a beach. And we end up in West Michigan when there's like 3 feet of snow in winter.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not too far from a beach, but it's not quite the same as
Yeah.
Southern Europe.
Not quite the same, but
The Riviera, it's
got
not.
the beach part right. But that's a funny story. Sometimes beer takes you when you least expect.
Yes, absolutely. So last but not least, I'd love to hear who might be your bucket list drinking companion, somebody alive or dead that you haven't had a beer with yet, but you'd love to.
A guy that I deeply, how do you say it? Not appreciate, but admire. A guy that I admire a lot in the beer world is Garrett Oliver. I would love to sit down with him one of these days to share beer. I think that he does amazing work, not just brewing beer, but also teaching people about beer and food pairing. Every time people ask me about beer and food pairing, I go straight to his book. I think he's such a character and has an awesome story and a track record in the beer industry. I would love to share beer with him.
Absolutely. Well, that might just happen, Garrett. If you hear this, come on out. You've got an international experience here in West Michigan, so you got to come out and meet Linus and Renata and have a beer. Well, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Congratulations and welcome to the Michigan brewing community. Welcome to the States. I'm really excited to learn more about Tres Gatos and have a beer with you sometime soon. But keep on putting your beautiful beer in the world. Thanks for spending time today.
And consider yourself invited to come here visit us.
All right, love to. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.